Good evening, or good morning. Oh my goodness, it is truly time to rock out. With what's going on in this society right now today, last time we were together, we talked a little bit about what was going on with our city, what was going on in our city. And so I just feel like I need a little rock in my life. Uh, you know, yeah, I heard the word tell me that he is my rock. He's my battle axe in a time of conflict. Oh my goodness. We are dealing with a lot of things out there. So I was taking myself back. Back in the day, I grew up on the Motown sound, but there was always rock in my life. We had Jim Morrison, we had people like Clapton, we had people even the Beatles were around. I've never been a Beatles fan, but I like the song Let It Be. But we had something else special. We had a president that I remember quite well. Before him, there was Dwight D. Eisenhower. There was a conflict between Dwight D. Eisenhower and the president that I knew quite well, President John F. Kennedy. Mm, that's when we could say, that's our president. Some people used to say back where I was living, well, we got our first black president, John F. Kennedy. Yeah, before President Barack Obama, there was John F. Kennedy. Why did people say that? Good question. I'm glad you asked. But before I do that, I got to be awake. So I'm still woke. Mm. This is not really coffee this time. This is tea. Yeah, you can be awake with tea. Ah, it's very good. This is made out of natural herbs. I mean, they're in a packet, and you put it into the cup of hot water. You let it, just what do they call it? Um, steam, stem, whatever, and you have good, delicious tea. This is incredible stuff. It has ginseng and cranberries and dates and all kinds of stuff that's in this pouch. Very beautiful. But as I digress, we had a president, John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was dealing with a lot of things back then. He had to deal with what was called the Cold War, dealing with people from Russia, of all places. And Russia is still on everybody's mind, just like Georgia on my mind. Love you, Ray Charles. But what is happening with our presidents these days? Or I should say, president. But I remember John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy actually had a tour at my elementary school. He had a program called the President's Physical Fitness Campaign. I like to see our president do the things that John F. Kennedy talked about doing. You got measured on push-ups, pull-ups, climbing that crazy rope and gym. That was a beast. I could only make it up 3/4 of the way. I think my backside just was too much. Gravity took over. But I was good on the shuttle race. I had to run and pick up these erasers and run back. I was good on the push-ups and the sit-ups. We had a 50-yard dash. I always ran real well. President, Commission on Physical Fitness. I've never heard one time this president talk about being physically fit. We get these reports that have been given to us, just like no one's seen the tax returns. We never seen the physical report either. You'll catch that after I leave here. But there's something that happened during that time. President Kennedy, he was really involved with government in the right way. He took on the communist regime of Fidel Castro. And then he dealt with it was an autocrat, President Diem in South Vietnam that was dealing with the communist regime out of North Vietnam and how we supported him. in his way, even leading us into the Vietnam conflict. You heard me, conflict, because it was never declared a war through Congress. And that's another story that we talk about cultures. We had the Vietnam culture and the Vietnam era culture, the Vietnam soldier. They were not treated well. I used to be a consultant with the Vet Center, helping those veterans that suffer from PTSD. Some of the best things I've ever experienced listening to their stories when they return back to this country. The culture of the Vietnam era vet. Sad. Then we're dealing with what's happening here now. So reflecting on these soldiers being given permission to go into 19 cities in this country. Illinois is one, where I'm from. 19 cities. Now they're being given arms, the National Guard, and being threatened with more military personnel going. Now, if things serve me correctly, I thought the military was used to be used in a time of war. We're being told that we're at war in our own cities against our own citizens. So sending our own soldiers into our cities to have war with the people that live there. They're not policemen. They're not police. We're being told that there's crime up. Statistics show us in these cities, especially DC, that crime is actually down. And Chicago's next on the list, and New York, and all these cities. I want to run something by you and see if we may be returning back to something like this. This is back in the era.
And relevant news stories will paint a vivid picture of the effects of segregation, discrimination, and bigotry on the lives of both blacks and whites. Comparisons will be made between.
You saw that first clip. That first clip dealt with that said Black Lives Matter. And I'll tell you over and over again that this country is dealing with what is going on between black folks and white folks. Of course, we have the Hispanic culture that's also been involved. We have the Jewish culture that's being involved. We have the Asian cultures that's being involved. We have LGBTQIA plus culture that's being involved with these attacks. But you look at that symbol right there. The symbol is a symbol of the Confederacy. George Wallace, governor of Alabama, refused to let students into school. But that is a mindset of a lot of people. Why? Racism is not based on logic, folks. But let's see what this clip says again. I want you to pay attention to this.
Many racially fractured periods of American history and what's going on right now. Slavery was abolished just 150 years ago. Jim Crow only 50 years ago. Yet stop and frisk, voter ID, stand your ground, income inequality, and a host of other current problems are proof that their detrimental effects continue to be felt and that the struggle for equal rights for all must continue.
You can never whip these boys if you don't keep you and them separate.
This is
I
Bull
found that out
Connor.
in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
I mentioned last time we were together, Plessy versus Ferguson. That was a rule before Brown versus Board of Education, separate but equal. There's no way things are equal, keeping people separate. But that was Bull Connor's manifestation there.
That is Theophilus Eugene Bull Connor. He was the Commissioner of Public Safety for the city of Birmingham, Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement. That office gave Connor complete control of both the Birmingham Police Department and the Birmingham Fire Department.
Are we returning to this moment?
1961, Connor
These
won a landslide
19 cities plus.
term as Commissioner of Public Safety in Birmingham, Alabama. As Commissioner, Connor had administrative authority over the police, fire departments, schools, public health services, and libraries.
You see the similarity. Take control over every agency in government. Every agency. That's what's making I want you to see the symbolism, the parallel between Bull Connor's notions and what's happening in this administration. Take over all the governing agency and let one person control it all. That's what your president's doing. A symbol of racism. This is John F. Kennedy's statement that he makes. He was part of the civil rights movement, even though his presidency was only 61 and 63. But he says the civil rights movement should thank God for Bull Connor. He helped us as much as Abraham Lincoln. Think about the power in that. The work that we can do today, we may be thanking this president for pushing us to look at democracy for human rights again and civil rights. President Kennedy. I just talked about him.
Do you think you can keep Birmingham in the present situation of segregation?
I may not be able to do it, but I'll die trying.
On Sunday, May 14th, Mother's Day, the Freedom Riders,
Mother's
civil
Day.
rights activists who rode interstate buses in segregated southern states to challenge segregation as unconstitutional, arrived in Birmingham. This was after a rough experience in Anniston, Alabama, where one of their buses had been firebombed and burned in an act of violence by members of the Ku Klux Klan. A number of Klan members boarded the new.
We're used to the Klan running around with hoods on and robes. They're not wearing them anymore. They're dressed in business suits. They're driving fine cars. They're shopping with you in the grocery stores. That's the Klan. They're in the open. They bombed that bus, and they did a lot worse than that.
Greyhound bus and beat the riders. By the time they reached the terminal in Birmingham, a larger mob of Klansmen and news reporters were waiting for them. The riders and some of the reporters were beaten viciously with
John
metal
Lewis.
bars, pipes, and bats. Bull Connor, who knew exactly where and when the Freedom Riders were to arrive, purposely held back his police force. This allowed the Klan time to rampage, unrestrained, for a full 15 minutes. When the police finally did arrive, not a single arrest was made at the scene. Connor blamed the slow police response on many factors, but the most inventive.
As we think about ICE, we hear the same thing going on with ICE. Beating people, arresting them, and no one there to help. They're holding back the local police when these injustices are being done with families, the ICE people. Now, I mentioned to you that how America deals with black people and white people. The situation is that people have been given a message that these people that are being arrested are criminals and thugs and gang members and all that kind of thing. The same rhetoric you're hearing about black people. When you hear people talk about, when you hear the president saying we're going to send more troops into these cities, every city he mentioned was a city that has a high level of black population and typically had black mayors. Don't get it twisted. I'm not making this stuff up. But this is very similar to what the ICE people are doing, just like the Klan did.
Was the one he gave to the press. There were no policemen in sight as the buses arrived because they were all visiting their mothers on Mother's Day.
That's
Even
kind
the
of
press
cool.
had trouble buying that one.
This is the flag. I call it Black history
This is African American
is American history. we're looking at this as a strong possibility, as these 19 cities, that one dog there, that black one, I won't even say what Bull Connor named that dog. You can take a guess. But he gave that dog the N-word name, his favorite dog.
Tactics Connor used to enforce racial segregation and deny civil rights to black citizens, especially during the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's Birmingham campaign of 1963, made him the international symbol of racism. And he sure lived up to it. Connor infamously directed the use of fire hoses and police attack dogs against peaceful demonstrators, including children. On May 2nd, 1963,
I mentioned in the last episode what children are being subjected to, just like these children, just like in ICE. They're being taken away too. So keep things in mind. I just want to let you see the parallels.
during a nonviolent movement led by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
And he's come under attack
to the integration efforts of African Americans in Birmingham
by this president.
The Birmingham Police Department beat and arrested 959 children ranging from ages 6 to 18. Connor arrested Dr. King, holding him long enough for King to write his famous Letter from a Birmingham Jail, considered one of the most important documents in the
Anybody that goes against this president is being subjected to probably getting locked up, their homes getting raided, illegal things being said, terrible things being said about them. This is very similar to what's going on right now. If you don't agree with me, I'm going to take you out, basically, or have someone else take you out.
history of the nonviolent struggle for racial equality. This show was written and directed by Harlan Kierson.
Listen to this.
Thank you for listening. And remember, none of us can truly embrace the future until we first confront the past.
None of us can embrace the future until we confront the past. And truly, Black lives do matter, no matter what may be happening in these cities across this country. Black lives do matter, and we must keep that in our mind to understand that. So I just want us to understand that we must work together to try to do things. Now, this next presentation is more about what's happening in the city that I love, Chi-Town. And just listen to some of the messaging that's going on here. And as you listen to the messaging, just pay attention to some of the things that are being said, and see if it makes any sense to you. So here we have what is being said about Chicago.
Illegal immigration is the city of Chicago. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump praised the National Guard's efforts in D.C., saying that crime is way down due to the success. He explained that Chicago comes next, then New York City.
Crime was already down. Don't fall for the okie doke, people. Well, let me get my cup here so I can feel more awake. Crime was already down. Everything that we hear, we're supposed to accept as truth. There's been statistics done in terms of the first term that he had, how many times he lied and how the lies keep coming. But you can always fact check. I did that in the last episode, fact checking.
Take a listen.
So, I really am honored that the National Guard has done such an incredible job working with the police, and we haven't had to bring in the regular military, which we're willing to do. We have to. And after we do this, we'll go to another location and we'll make it safe also. We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. And
That's the stick that you get. He justifies his actions by demeaning other people, especially their intelligence. Vice President Kamala Harris he was telling us all that she was stupid. This is a very well-educated young lady. She's a vice president of the United States. She has lots of degrees in attorney general, you name it. But yet she's put in the same category as another black person as being very incompetent, who is an educator, this mayor in Chicago. Let's see what else comes out.
We'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this. And it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come.
Listen
They're
to
wearing
this.
red hats, just like this one. But they're wearing red hats.
What does that hat say? Trump was right about everything. You can't make this up. You can read it. How can you be right about everything? I don't get it. That's that's sign of narcissism to me, bragging. I heard that biblically, Paul said, do not come boastful and like a bragging for the words you say are like a clanging cymbal. But right about everything. I wish I could be right about everything, but I'm willing to take the heat. The best phrase I heard when I first started my career was always be receptive to constructive criticism. Constructive criticism, if you do it with this man, the word that I've been hearing a lot is not repentance, is not redemption, not reckoning, is retribution. Please like and subscribe. I guess it's kind of a commercial for me. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Let's see what else he says.
African American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago.
He said the black ladies.
Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know.
The black ladies.
They
Tell
want
him to come to Chicago.
something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
Y'all heard him.
On crime and illegal immigration is the city of Chicago.
But I'm wondering
Speaking
what
from the Oval Office, Trump
I wonder what
praised
the
the
black
National
ladies
Guard's
really are
efforts in
saying.
DC.
I wonder what the black ladies really are saying. So I want you to. She says a lot of words that I don't use, but in order to keep it real, I want you to hear what she says, what the black ladies feel like. She's from Chicago. So just hold on to your seat when you hear her talk.
Look at this bullshit.
African American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know, and they want something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
Here's what I want to know. Who in the hell President Trump is talking about black women, beautiful black women, supporting him and love him and he for black people? Who the fuck told him that?
Sorry, you're
Where
French.
did you get that from? Who made that polling? Leave black people out of this bullshit. Leave us alone. At some point, this has to stop. I don't know if it's now or in the future, but black people, black women leave us out of this. We are tired. We are not asking you for no protection and no guidance. Not black women.
So that was her take on it. She wants to be left out of this. I'm not making this up, folks. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So I just want you to hear what she had to say. She's going into Chicago now, saying that he's going to do this and do that. 19 cities. Now, I want to hear what the mayor has to say. We have to be cognizant of this. I wanted you to understand the similarity between taking over, leaving legal issues aside, letting other people run rampant and do what they want, like Bull Connor allowed the Klan to do. That is happening right now in our cities with ICE. And now he's trying to unleash our own National Guard upon their own citizens. It might be somebody's cousin that's in Texas, and his cousins, and his other, he's from Colorado. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But Chicago is next, big target. Let's hear what President Brandon Johnson says.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning. Please tell me you're going to change the subject. Okay.
Well, I was going to, but maybe I don't want to anymore.
You're good. Go for it. Whatever.
Sarah, what was that monologue about? Could we discuss what was happening yesterday? The president has powers to take over the Metro Police Force in D.C. Does not have that power here, but could, under the Insurrection Act, send in the National Guard into the city of Chicago.
You say insurrection? Did I hear the word insurrection? I am just like flabbergasted. This convicted felon is saying that people are committing crimes. He's a felon himself. And yet he's blaming other people for being criminals. The pot calling the kettle black, pardon the pun. Please like and subscribe. Let's see what Mayor Brandon Johnson says.
The president was, he called you an incompetent man yesterday. He said the same thing about the governor. Talk about your feelings on what the president had to say about crime rates in D.C., in Chicago, how that doesn't necessarily jive with the numbers that we're getting from the police forces from both cities, and your thoughts on the president using the Insurrection Act as a catalyst to bring in the National Guard into the streets of Chicago.
Well, it's clear that the President of the United States of America is very much interested in insurrections. He led one. And I remember a time in which we had presidents who declared war on poverty. This president has declared war on poor people. And he's doing it by way of taking away, Medicaid, taking away SNAP, literally taking away food. He has gone after the Department of Public Education, defunding critical resources to our cities. And he is literally plundering our cities as we speak. And I am quite disturbed, quite frankly, by the unhealthy style of governance where he has shredded our Constitution. And, if the president was sincere, he would not be declaring war on poor people and going after homeless people. That's a much different posture than what we're taking in the city of Chicago. right? I mean, we've expanded our shelter beds by 126%, put $40 million into our shelter system to improve them. We're on pace to build 10,000, affordable units by the time my first term ends. And we're making critical investments to drive violence down on the city of Chicago. Homicides are down 30%, shootings and shooting victims down almost 40%. So it's evident that the work is working. And so, as disturbing as it is, we can't not lose sight on what we are facing. And President Trump shifting the highest concentration of wealth into the hands of the ultra-rich. It's why here in Chicago, we're moving to challenge the ultra-rich to pay their fair share in taxes, right? You have a tax burden of working people in the city of Chicago about 19 and a half, almost 20%, where for the rich, it's about 11.5%. For the ultra-rich, they almost pay no taxes, right? And so my focus is going to always be to protect people of this city and to build the safest, most affordable big city in America. And though we take these threats seriously, we will not bow down or succumb to his tyrant rage.
Have you had conversations with public safety, with the superintendent, on the possibility of that happening?
Well, he doesn't have the legal authority to do it, right? So let me just be very clear. He does not have the legal authority to do it as
right. I'm not talking about the police force. I'm talking about the Insurrection Act and National Guard.
I'm saying he does not have, I know what you're talking about. He does not have the legal authority to do it. In fact, troops do not have policing power. They're not even trained to do that. So understand what this president is provoking. He is provoking on sending federal troops, the National Guard, into cities to plunder them, though those entities do not have policing power. So they can't even do the very thing that he claims that he wants them to do. You talk about incompetence. Look, I taught 7th grade. In Chicago, 7th graders have to pass the Constitution. I taught it. This president could use a 7th grade class right now to understand the basics of the Constitution.
Take them to school.
And so it's incumbent upon all of us as we literally watch this man shred the Constitution in front of us, taking not only a tyrannical approach, an authoritarianism approach towards governance, is doing it with no resistance from his own party. And I'm grateful that there are Democrats around the country and even reasonable Republicans who recognize that he is a threat to our democracy. You all have heard me speak of this before. I've said this for the last couple of years. The extreme right in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War.
Yes.
His own mentor, President Andrew Jackson, is how he is modeling his behavior. The Trail of Tears, right? Snatching people off of their land. A war on poor people. He is one of the biggest threats to humanity that we've seen in an entire generation. And as mayor of the city of Chicago, and as someone who understands the premise of our Constitution, we are justified in our resistance to his authoritarianism.
Boy, he said it all. You know, Governor Pritzker had a thing up there, and he was talking about liberty and self-governance and people having the right to live with liberty and live with freedom. I started talking about President John F. Kennedy. His principles are under attack. So I want to read to you, just bear with me. I want to read to you some of the aspects of President John F. Kennedy, a president that we could use today. So I just want to share with you a little bit about him. This is President Kennedy's statement on democracy. And just bear with me. During his presidency and political career, John F. Kennedy's statements on democracy focused on themes of citizen responsibility, the global struggle for freedom, and the moral duty of a just society. President Kennedy, he viewed democracy not as a given right, but as a living system that requires constant engagement, courage, and action from its citizens. Key themes in his statements on democracy were citizen agreement. Kennedy consistently argued that the success of a democracy depends on the participation of its citizen. First point was, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That was a famous line from his 1961 inaugural address and his very definitive statement on citizen responsibility. We must all work together, in other words. His second point was the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of all. Intolerance, in some words, is injustice for us all everywhere. Kind of equates to that. But the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of all. Don't get it twisted. But this quote underscores the importance of an informed and engaged electorate for the health of a democracy. I have questions about this last election, and there's a lot of things coming out now about some beliefs that some things were done wrong. The third point here, President Kennedy, he believed that in a democracy, every citizen, regardless of his interest or her interest in politics, holds office and bears responsibility for the quality of their government. He also had an eye on the global struggle for freedom. So in the context, I talked about the Cold War earlier. In the context of the Cold War, Kennedy framed democracy as a beacon of hope against tyranny. For example, the Berlin Wall speech in 1963, Kennedy famously declared, freedom, and quote, freedom has many difficulties and democracy is not perfect, but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in. That's that communism. This statement highlighted the contrast between free societies and communist regimes. What's so different that what we are being pushed on us right now? Think about it. Authoritarianism, pushing us, troops in the cities marching. That's creating fear in people. Second point here about global struggle, confronting a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. And President Kennedy, in his 1961, President Kennedy and the press addressed what President Kennedy described as the Cold War as a battle against a system that relies, listen to this, that relies on subversion, intimidation, and the silencing of dissent. That is happening right now. I mentioned retribution. We have a Cold War within our own United States right now. Subversiveness, intimidation, and the silencing of dissent. If you don't agree with me, I have retribution for you. And this is with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. Wartime discipline, that's exactly what these troops represent. If you got to be subversive, intimidate, silence and dissent, because I'm going to put a wartime presence right in your cities. Think about it. A third point of global struggle for freedom, support for the oppressed. In President Kennedy's inaugural address, he pledged American support to the Hudson villages of half the globe, struggling to break the bonds of mass misery. And he did it because he said, quote, because it is right. He also talked about justice and equality. So Kennedy linked ideals of democracy directly to the American civil rights movement. He did his address on civil rights, 1963. This is what President Kennedy declared. He declared that civil rights were a moral issue, and I put human rights in here too, a moral issue as old as scripture. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself. And it's clear, he didn't say that part, but old as scripture, that's scripture that I hold on to. He says, let me start it again, that he declared that civil rights were, quote, a moral issue as old as scripture and as clear as the U.S. Constitution. He believed in the Constitution. You heard Mayor Johnson in Chicago say that our Constitution is being attacked and stripped to shreds. Excuse me. And President Kennedy, he called for an end to racial discrimination in voting, schools, housing, and jobs. Let's stick on the vote part for a second. What we have going on right now in Texas, going to round up other politicians there in their Congress there and to lock them up because they couldn't get a quorum to do this redistricting, gerrymandering, discrimination to take votes away from electing possibly more Democrats or Black people. His third point, this other point here that he talked about, poverty and wealth. Reflecting the ideas of Thomas Jefferson, there's that guy again, Thomas Jefferson, who I'm going to remind you all again, he had that slave woman, Sally Hemings, as his other wife with 6 children. But reflecting the ideas of Thomas Jefferson, Kennedy says that, quote, widespread poverty and concentrated wealth cannot long endure side by side in a democracy. So you see here, President Kennedy way ahead of the game. Oligarchs, that upper echelon that's getting all of the tax breaks, is creating widespread poverty because we know that tension and relaxation cannot coexist on the same plane. The people that are poor are trying to stay as relaxed as possible in their situation. The tension comes from the people that are wealthy because the poor people can't seem to get there either. Kenny talked about openness and dissent. And finally, he says, as a champion of democratic principles, Kennedy's valued transparency and intellectual freedom. We know what's happened with our intellectual freedoms. We're being told that we can't read certain books. We're told that the Smithsonian, we'll talk about that in the next episode, that the Smithsonian doesn't have the right to share with you all history, good, bad, and discuss it. That's intellectual freedom. But the 2 points President Kennedy will end with is here. Quote, he says, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. In his address to the press, he championed transparency, stating that the dangers of concealment, quote, far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. In other words, we want to know the truth. As they say, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But when we have people that are running this country that don't understand that, it's like my grandmother said, Some people will lie faster than a horse can trot. Let me say that again. Some people lie faster than a horse can trot. In his last bullet, President Kennedy talked about a democratic society. Listen to this. The highest duty of the writer, the composer, the artist is to remain true to himself. Socrates even told us that. The highest virtue of any man is to know thyself. But he says the writer, the composer, the artist is to remain true to himself and to let the chips fall where they may. In other words, get some gonads, pay your dues. If you're a convicted felon, pay to the piper. He also asserted that the importance of freedom of expression for a vibrant democracy. So we need people to keep having their books to be read. We need people to read the books that they are wanting to read. And so here we have it, President Kennedy is speaking truth to the power that we are subjected to right now. So what are we going to do? We're going to stay kind of serve and help ourselves down on our knees, or we're going to stand upright to do the right thing. What are we going to do? I say we need to stand upright to do the right thing. I'm Dr. Barry Staples. Please like and subscribe to this channel. And it's always a pleasure to be here. Up in the corner there, you see a QR code. You can donate. This is a nonprofit. We're part of Race and Ethics Corporation. This is Race and Cultures Bridging the Divides. And please visit our website at raceandculturesbridgingthedivides.com to learn more about us and to learn more about what we do. I tell you, I'm on fire. There are so many things that I want to talk about. Remember, Race and Cultures Bridging the Divides. We touch on all aspects of culture, sports, lifestyles, marriages. We will be discussing all those different cultures. But we always know that race is something you cannot go through every day without thinking about race, which is a terrible thing that was actually developed in this country. Title of this episode, final episode, part 3, Trump and Bull Connor, a racist attack on America with martial law, and remembering President John F. Kennedy. Let that soak in with you. The antics of Bull Connor is no different than what we are looking at right now. But we did have hope back in the day. 1960s, early for 2 years, gave us an incredible president, John F. Kennedy. Some of you know the story or heard the stories of his family. And they did a lot to bring us together. Please like and subscribe to this channel. I look forward to hearing from you. Hit the QR code and you can donate any amount you want. I apologize if the lady that was speaking said a lot of words and she should have said, pardon my French, but she didn't. She was that black woman that she was saying, no, we don't want you. Nevertheless, time goes on. I'm going to try to be woke. This cup here has some interesting words to it. It says, loving with the love of God, involved in the work of God, faithful to the word of God, equipped by the Spirit of God. And if you look at those letters, if I can turn this around, if you do that, all those, it says life, love, involved, faithful, and equipped. Life. If you do those things with the love, work, word, and spirit of God, that will work. I'm not talking about what some people are calling Christianity. They're misleading people, and it's not Christianity that I know. But God knows. He's always sovereign. Until next time, everybody have a blessed evening. And remember, you can endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. In His name, all God's willing, hope to see you next time. And maybe back tomorrow. Okay, God bless all of you. Good night.